Hi, class. So we're going to go through Unit 6, Rock and Roll. Buckle up. This is a long video because I really like this one. All right. So we're going to be going over in rock and roll and the different styles of rock and roll, because rock and roll is like a giant umbrella of things that are happening. And just look at some of those different characteristics of what even is rock. So rock and roll, there was a big divide in what was happening. Everything before 1950 is kind of considered traditional, and then everything after 1950 is everything else. So 1950 is kind of when rock and roll started to become a thing and started to really be labeled as rock and roll. And it originated as this blend of African American and white styles and combined with blues and jazz and gospel and R&B to really create what we now consider rock and roll. And this style really challenged segregation because of this blending of styles. So before, everything was separate. We would have what was called race music, so jazz, blues, gospel, R&B, and then everything else, the traditional stuff. And so now we are challenging segregation by combining it all together. Some of the key instruments were electric guitar, electric bass, drum kit, vocals, keyboard. Rock and roll isn't limited to these instruments. This is just what you're normally going to see. So like I said, it really began in the 1920s, but it wasn't labeled yet. So 1928, we get Boogie Woogie. We get that 12-bar blues pattern that fused with other styles. So this is kind of the time where stuff is developing and creating and fusing with each other. Late 1940s, we get Fats Domino, Big Joe Turner, began creating early rock that had that stronger beat and that faster tempo. I think we're coming from blues and jazz, slower tempo. So we're speeding it up. Then Alan Freed, we get the Moondog Coronation Ball in 1952. And this is the first concert where rock and roll was used. And we start to get it to be labeled as rock music. And like I said, it's race music was presented to a multicultural audience. So remember, this genre is a big, we're challenging this idea of segregation because we're going to blend it all together. So tell me, true or false, the origins of rock and roll can be traced back to blues, gospel, and jazz music. True or false? Now we got to talk about a cover song. This is big in rock and roll and still used a lot today. So the song is created by somebody or created originally for somebody, and they perform it, but then the song is performed by somebody else, and they use this as their own music. And it's called a cover song. So a lot of artists still do this today. They'll take an older song or a song that somebody else did that wasn't necessarily as successful. They will re-record it and release it as their own music and receive success with it. And this was a response to, once again, race music, aka blues, gospel, soul. They would take those songs written by African Americans and they would have a white person record it. Yeah, so not cool. But the idea was they take this music and they present it to this different audience and spread it faster. And it did work. The songs were more often written and performed by African American artists, but they were performed by white musicians. And they did try to reach that wider cultural audience. But a lot of times these songs were sanitized. So think about the origins, blues, jazz, gospel. A lot of the topics have to do with the experience of African Americans. So they took those experiences out. They took out any racial slurs, any mention of African Americans themselves, or talk about anything that was even vaguely offensive. Totally sanitized it, stripped it of any of its background historical reference. We also start to get what's called rockabilly. So this was kind of on that divide where stuff was shifting. It was rhythm and blues performed by white artists. That's essentially what it was. And they combined R&B, gospel, and country. And a leading artist of this was Elvis Presley. It had these kind of hiccuping and gulping and stuttering vocals that really characterized it. Just think we're taking R&B and country. So we're taking a lot of that twanginess of country and then putting it with rock R&B. So it's kind of created this hiccuping, gulping sound. Bill Haley and his Comets, Their song Rock Around the Clock was the first to top the Billboard chart. So this is like the first rock song that made it. And like I said, Elvis was really well known for this style. He was living in Memphis, Tennessee at the time. So he was listening to a lot of blues music that's prominent there. And he was also listening to a lot of country music that's prominent there and kind of combined it together. So tell me, who placed the first rock and roll song on the Billboard charts and paved the way for other rock and roll musicians? Was it Elvis, Bill Haley and his Comets, or Sam Phillips? Who was it? So we got to talk about Mr. Chuck Berry. He is a founder and pioneer of rock and roll. He was self-taught, kind of found that basic chords could play anything on the radio. This is still true today. If you go to YouTube, you can watch videos of people who are like, I can play one song with these 4 chords. And it's true because it goes back to that 12-bar blues. It follows a pattern of chords. And it's typically 4 to 5 chords that keep repeating. And so he found that by just learning these 4 to 5 chords, he could play anything. Sir John's Trio, later renamed Chuck Berry's Trio, was his group. And it was this kind of boogie-woogie hillbilly style that was going on. His song Maybelline reached #1 on the Billboard charts. And he did share royalties with this jockey Alan Freed, because that's kind of how that happens sometimes in the day. Other bands frequently covered his songs, but they had a hard time covering Maybelline because of his style and the way he sang it. It just didn't sound right. Elvis did cover the song and it sounds good, but it's not Chuck Berry. So Elvis Presley, 1953 was when he had his first recording, and he recorded rockabilly. He also made some movies. But in 58, he was drafted in the Army, and he focused on making movies after that until the late 60s when he returned to performing music. And he really struggled with addiction and depression, and this affected his life. Now, this is common with rock and roll music, musicians, that they struggle with these things. And some of it's the environment they're in, some of it's the pressure that they're under. But this is really common with rock musicians. Elvis was really well known for his cover songs. So a lot of his music was written by other people. So he covered a lot of Chuck Berry's music. A lot of people didn't know who Chuck Berry was. They knew who Elvis was, and they knew Chuck Berry's music through Elvis. So tell me, why would radio, well, I got to go back. Mainstream radio really didn't like to play his music. Elvis made him nervous. So it goes back over here to where we're talking about like the sanitization of music. It's right here. They were sanitized, it took out racial slurs. So anything that was vaguely offensive was removed. Guys, Elvis was offensive. He was offensive specifically because of his dancing style. If you've ever watched a video of Elvis, he like really gets his hips into it. He's very much very into using his hips when he dances, which was very offensive to the very polite ladies of society. So radio was nervous about playing his music because he was offensive, according to them, just because of the way he danced. Y'all, if they could see how people dance in music videos today, they would just be horrified. Like, seriously, go look up a video of Elvis and compare it to today, and you'd be like, that was offensive. Yes, it was. But he succeeded because he was really popular with teenagers. So one of those things, it's like, he makes money, he sells music and merchandise and movies, so we're gonna have to look past it because he makes his money. So now answer this question. Why were radio stations reluctant to play his music? Why were they like, I don't know about that, maybe we should, I don't know. So now we get to the Beatles. Love the Beatles. They are my absolute favorite band, except for I was not alive in their height. I wish I was, because that would have been really cool. Anyway, they became an overnight sensation with their song, I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was just overnight, instant fame. Interesting fact about them, they were originally a folk band. They were not originally a rock band. And some of their early music, you can really hear this kind of folk undertone that they've got happening. It's not just straight rock and roll. They were also kind of early and kind of combining styles. They were influenced a lot by Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Elvis, Buddy Holly, others. And they did do some cover songs in the beginning, but they were kind of unconventional for their time because they wrote a lot of their own music. This wasn't the industry standard. A lot of times either you covered other people's songs or somebody wrote music for you to perform. And so they influenced a lot of artists because of this. So other artists took up this idea, well, I can write my own stuff too. I want to write my own stuff. So the folk rock genre was just developing. And they have this song, I've Just Seen a Face, which that was stuck in my head. And like I said, they kind of combined these two ideas. They also used a lot of unconventional instrumentation. So they didn't stick to the basic guitar, bass, drums. They didn't always stick to that. They also, there's a couple songs where they used sitar, which is a Indian folk instrument. And so they would use stuff like that and things that were just not what the Western listener was expecting. The band broke up in the 1970s, but a lot of them went on to have solo careers and still were rather successful. Now, rock and roll is all about social, style, and attitude. This genre, when it was first coming out, really appealed to teenagers because it was rebelling against their parents. And that's, you know, teenagers, kind of common. They like to rebel. So the adults were just totally appalled by rock and roll. It was just a little too risky for them. And it was rebelling against these rules. So they often developed the clothing of the singers. They adopted their fashion. And the music itself rebelled against social inequality and segregation. So it rebelled against this idea and was all about combining and working together. Hollywood really capitalized on this by making movies that were geared towards teenagers. And we still see that trend today. Just go look at what's on Netflix, on Hulu, Disney Plus. Go look at what's in the theaters. There are movies that are geared specifically for teenagers that adults are like, I'm never going to watch that because I graduated high school forever ago. I really don't want to watch a movie about a high schooler. But they targeted this audience. They also created some new dance trends based on the music. So we got the jitterbug, the twist, we get funk, we get house music, we get techno that all stem from this. Yes, the funk, house, and techno do sort of fall under the rock and roll umbrella. They are their own genre, but there's a lot of stuff that falls under this massive umbrella. American Bandstand in 1956. This was a TV show that was all about teens and the trends and dancing. So they would have a band, whatever band was popular at the time, playing music, and it had teens dancing. That was literally the whole show. They played like the top 10 songs of the day or the week or the whatever, and teens were dancing. That was the whole show. But it brought a lot of artists into the mainstream that were not necessarily recognized before, and it spread a lot of fashion. So we're starting to get TVs more commonplace in households. Now fashion is starting to spread, and it's not just like a local area has their own fashion trend. It's becoming national and even international. So the British are coming. British invasion started in the 1960s with the Beatles, and they really gained popularity in that US audience. That first wave had Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Animals, the Hollies, and the Yardbirds. Please go look all those bands up. Oh, so good. But other styles would kind of follow with that, and they influenced other audiences and other bands. We get Mercy Beat. This was popularized by the Beatles. They had that lead guitar, bass, rhythm guitar. We also got blues rock, psychedelic rock, more Beatles, and progressive rock. So tell me, which term names the mass introduction of British groups to American culture after the arrival of the Beatles? Was this Mercy Beat, Woodstock, or the British invasion? So Billboard Hot 100, the Billboard magazine. This is how music was ranked. And it was ranked based on sales, number of times it's played on the radio, number of times it was played on the jukebox. All of these things were being counted. And in 1955, they created the top 100 list. later become the Hot 100 list that started as the top 100 list, and it ranked them based on these factors. In 1957, they stopped including jukebox plays. And in 58, that's when it became the Hot 100. And they were just ranking singles based on radio plays and sales. And this was used as the standard to judge a song. Of course, we all have different standards of what we think makes a song good, but this was a way that they standardized it. And we get the Nielsen Media Research Company. They also included TV ratings, and they had their Arbitron, which measured size and makeup of radio audiences. So they were measuring how many radios were tuned in to listen to it. So not just how many times was it played on the radio, but how many radios were tuned in while that song was playing. And then 1991, we get the Nielsen Sound Scan that also helped to track sales. So sales of records, sales of singles, all that kind of thing. And so now we've got a way to measure these achievements. Now, how do we award them? We get the Grammy Awards in 1959. This is when they started, and it recognized excellence in the recording industry. Academy Awards. There's some awards for music and movies. We get the Billboard Music Awards, which this is what honors that Billboard list. We get the American Music Awards, which this is more pop music, and it's based on what the fans like. Then we get the Country Music Awards, and this is where members of the association vote for the winners. So there's no fans, no sales involved. It's just who in the association thinks. So the music business, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Think you're selling music, sheet music, you're selling records and CDs, and you're selling MP3s, and you've got iTunes and Spotify and commercials, and you've got merchandise sales. This is a huge industry. And so Berry Gordy Jr., we talked about him during Motown, he created an assembly line method. Well, companies adopted that assembly line method for producing music. We had a group of people who was in charge of identifying artists as potential to make money. And then they were put under contract. Then you have a group of songwriters, arrangers, producers, engineers. They helped create the product. So they make the music. They helped the artist sing the music, and then they engineer the recording to sound good. They make costumes and sets for their live performances. And then they create this image. And then we have a team that's totally in charge of distribution. So getting the music to radios, putting the music on CDs, making sure it gets to iTunes. We also have another team that's in charge of promotion. So the advertisement needs to be put out to sell it. They do that. Now we use social media, and there's a whole team that's what they do. Each of these little sections, it's not one person covering it. They have a team of people helping them. We get marketing, promotion, sales, and artisan development. Bands that tour sell more CDs. The more you interact with people, the more CDs you sell. And that's really where they made their money as a band. Because what you're hearing on the radio, they get some money from that, but that's mostly goes to the team that's helping to produce it. So now we got to talk about the law as it's related to this. So we have lots of publishing and copyright laws out there, and this is designed to protect creators of music, and it's creation and distribution of printed music when it comes to publishing. And so it means that you can't make copies of the physical printed music without permission. Intellectual property rights law, this is a federal copyright law, that only the copyright holder has the right to duplicate the music. Now, this also means singing it. So you can perform it. So you'll see a lot of people post cover songs on YouTube, but they can't make money off of it. So you can perform it, that's fine, but you can't make money off of it. It's all about the money. Piracy, and this is the illegal duplication of recorded music without permission. So you illegally downloaded the song, and you now have a recording that you didn't pay money for. Once again, it's all about the money. Are you taking money away from the people who own the rights? So tell me, what do you know about copyright law? What do you already know? This was a long video, and I get really excited about this unit, so thank you for bearing with me to the end. I want you to email me, and I will give you extra credit on the Unit 6 quiz. And in that email, I need you to tell me that you watched the Unit 6 video, so include those words so that I remember, oh, okay, this is what this is about. And then tell me your favorite rock band or song. Brownie points if you include a link, but that's not necessary. But I will give you extra credit on the Unit 6 quiz if you email me that you watched the video and you email me your favorite rock band or song. All right, guys, y'all have a fantastic day. Remember, if you need absolutely anything, you just call me and I'm here for you. All right, bye, guys.